Mi nombre es Aristides de Gracia y bueno.
Hello, I'm Aristides de Gracia, and I'm going to tell you about our experience with the Nexus in the Panama Canal. As you know, the canal's business is shorten the distances for the ships that travel through the canal, so that goods that go from one country to another, and we're talking about thousands of kilometers, can use the canal and shorten the trip. Now, some history about the canal since it was opened in 1914. It was one of the milestones of civil engineering at a world level. And then, after that date, the biggest milestones came in 2016, when, after a plebiscite, the country decided to enlarge the canal so as to capture the demand of maritime transportation in a much larger volume. So we decided to build a third lane through our country, and we changed the geography and the mappa mundi. To give you some idea of what the civil engineering works included, let me show you this video.
Bien.
So you have seen how deep the channel is, and the challenge that we were facing before the new route of the canal was opened in 2016. The challenges included not only civil engineering, but also IT challenges, because the canal had to be very secure and very fast for the transit of the vessels. So one of the first applications we made in order to support the operations of the canal was the suite of the trawlers that we did by using GeneXus. The main function is to help the vessels so that they can enter in the locks. They are extremely powerful, so they can push these steel vessels so that they enter the locks. We are talking about 48 trawlers, and we made an application with GeneXus in order to handle the planning and the working hours of all of the staff that works with these ships, because it's a 24/7 work, and we have an operation on the Pacific and on the Atlantic. And without these trawlers, the vessels wouldn't be able to cross the canal. We are talking about 700 people who were receiving every week and printing about 500 copies of their working hours and their shifts, so that they would know when they had to go on the trawler, who was the captain, who was the other person in duty. So each employee had a schedule, knowing which trawler he or she had to board, and there were 3 shifts. So this was and is an operation that runs 24/7, and it's the basis of the efficiency and the transit in the canal. after overcoming one of the first barriers, which was to show the administration that it was possible to create tools in order to support the operation of the canal, we were given another task, which was the suite of land transport, because the vehicles are very important so that the captains and the other crew members can reach on time the places in which they have to board the vessels, and this is therefore fundamental so that the vessels can cross the canal on time, because it takes about 8 hours to cross the canal. There are clients and there are goods that are waiting their turn everywhere in the world. So this was another application that we developed with GeneXus. And then the time of the works, the canal was going to come, and we had to have ready the system for reserving or for booking a shift or a turn in the canal. Normally, it is not necessary to book, but for some vessels that carry perishable goods, it's necessary to book and the crossing, and it may depend on the time of the year and the season, but it depends also whether the goods are coming from the US or from China. And here on the left-hand side, we see all the available slots for the vessels that are going to cross the traditional locks. And then on the right-hand side, you have the Neo-Panamax crossings, which are the books that are much larger than the others. So this is a dashboard that shows how the slots are being managed. There are 8 slots per day in order to cross the canal speedily. And there are rules for assigning the slots. It depends on the restrictions. For example, there are ships that cannot cross in the night if they are transporting gas, for example, because it's dangerous. So there is a daylight restriction. We built an engine of rules in order to govern the allocation of slots, and our clients, which are the main shipping companies in the world, use this system. In the process of building the enlargement of the canal, we face other challenges. For example, integrating the identity manager with the GAM of GeneXus, and we managed to do it. The maritime portal of the canal is in Oracle, but inside this portal is the applications to make the bookings. The client does not know that he's using 2 different technologies. They made it exactly the same. So the feeling is that it's just one, but inside the maritime portal there is a GeneXus system, and it's also used 24/7 everywhere in the world, so that the client can see their bookings, see how many slots are available, and thus program the time of the crossing of their vessels through the canal. One of the advantages is that the clients and the maritime agencies don't need to send requests by fax. They can send them via web, and the system triggers notices and informs the clients about the slots available and also the costs of the crossing. The system is in charge of this aspect too, and the cost is around $35,000 in order to book a slot to cross the canal. One other significant challenge was to deliver information in an efficient manner so that the client will be 100% informed of everything that is happening with a ship or a fleet. This is our test. This is one of the most important activities in the canal. It's about analyzing all of the blueprints and plans of the ships that want to cross the canal. The engineers who work for us have to receive these blueprints several months before the crossing in order to estimate the volume of cargo of each one of the ships. There are different kinds of vessels. For example, there are cruise ships, and we have to analyze the blueprints, but we charge them for the number of beds they have, and the full containers are charged for the volume of containers they can transport. And the gas ships are charged according to the volume of gas they can transport. So there are different rules for each market segment, and each of these rules are in the application we made with GenAccess. Another barrier was the integration with another systems in the canal, 8 in all, that are directly related with maritime traffic, invoicing, finance, financial backing or support, customer service. So the application extracts the information from each one of these systems to feed itself and give the relevant information for others to make decisions. Now this is the heart of the application, GX Flow BPM. And there are several activities here which are the pre-measurement of the ship and then the analysis itself. Each one of these tasks was assigned manually to each one of the inspectors. They would board the ship and they would verify the measurements inside the ship and verify or see also whether there were any deficiencies. The other flow controls the arrival inspection, which makes sure that the ships comply with every security measure that has to be respected in order to cross the canal. If there's any deficiency, our application allows the inspector to take a picture, send it to the captain on the port, and then he can decide whether there's something to solve there or whether the crossing can be allowed. So the heart of the application, as I said, is the GX flow, the BPM that creates the flows, and this is the inbox. There are tasks that can be self-assigned and also some that are automatic. It also works 24/7, and each inspector receives a list of the ships, the time, the lock, and also the place where he should board the ship, the Atlantic or the Pacific. There are some cases in which a person intervenes, for example, if it's a ship with special restrictions, or cases that require a special attitude from the inspector. This is the first application we made for native iOS. And besides giving the application to the client, it's important to give the client a good user experience. And you see what an inspector faces every day. In red, it's the depth of the ship, and the ladder is what the inspector uses in order to board the ship. We also have a feature to recognize fingerprints, and on the left hand side there is a menu that allows us to have access to all of the options and carry out the inspection on board. There were used to be multiple forms. The inspectors had to carry a backpack with lots of documents that had to be filled in manually on board and then signed by the captain. then they had to go to the office and transcribe all of the information in another system. With this mobile application, the inspection is done directly with the iPad, and when they have Wi-Fi, they send all of this information to the database, and it can work offline too. Before going out in the bay, they can upload information about all of the transits that are still pending, and that they can do 4 days in advance. So if anything happens with the system, they don't have to stop working. They can work offline for 4 days, registering all this information on board. This is the digital signature. We have a Java development for the external object, and we can register the captain's signature on board. Once the inspection has gone through, the system sends the notices to the captain and the shipping company so that they see that the inspection process was carried out according to the Canal's rules. Now let me show you how the iPad actually works.
Conlleva una enorme responsabilidad. Inspeccionar y confirmar que la información enviada en primera instancia es la correcta. También deben asegurarse que la embarcación cuenta con las condiciones adecuadas para...
I'm sorry, but we don't have direct sound in the booth, so it's not possible to interpret.
Para así determinar el peaje que debe pagar cuando transita por la vía interoceánica. El tránsito seguro y expedito por el canal es una garantía para el comercio mundial y orgullo de Panamá.
Bien.
So you saw this application on action. Now they take their iPad on board instead of a backpack. So, to give you some figures, only last year, the booking process showed a turnover of $203 million, the second figure in significance for the canal. And this is the application I showed you about for bookings. And then the toll charges amounted to the figure you see on the screen, also supported by the application as just showed, as well as the inspections management application. All this gave a lot of confidence to the administration in the development team that was using and proposing this kind of technology. And since we had to have everything ready by 2016, and the whole country, the whole world were waiting for the completion of the works, we managed to do it on time in a very agile manner. Now, this video will show you the 2 years or the two-year anniversary of the enlargement of the canal, and these are the kind of vessels that can cross the canal now. Many records have been reached and many milestones. These are vessels as high as a skyscraper, and these are ship that transports liquefied gas, and the biggest cruise ship to date. It says that the enlarged canal is now having a very positive effect and will have a positive effect for the future in maritime traffic. So I'll try to speed up this presentation. Our DNA is the transit of ships but around it there's a lot of information that is dispersed in various databases and technological platforms. All these systems add value to the canal, managing market segments, the location of the ships, the tolls, information about the cargo, dashboard, transit commission. We intended to create an application that included all of these functionalities. We did some design thinking, and we created this application, a mobile application, for the use of the management, and we called it Transit Cast. It was created for iOS and Android, and it summarizes all of the data sources that you saw. Let's see if we can give you a demo of the application.
A ver. Ahí va. Esta es la aplicación, bueno, vamos a...
This application was made with GenXus for iOS and Android. The menu on the left-hand side has the logo of the canal. And what can it give us? Well, it's reading live the names of the ships that are crossing the canal today. We can see here what's happening and how much each one of the ships are paying for the transit. Let's take one of them. This one is paying more than $1 million to cross the canal. Let's look for a full container. The Cap Jervis. And now I'm having access to the ship's inspection system, and I have here a summary of the information of all ships that have or are crossing the canal, and I have information on each one of the vessels. But I have another menu that allows me to see what time the vessel arrived in Panama, what time it crossed the first lock, how many locomotives are being used for the transit, how many tablets, etc. I can also see the conditions in this application. I have information about the cargo it's carrying, and then I'm going to into the financial system of the canal, and this is the invoice. And each one of the items, if I touch each one of the lines, I have a detail of the amounts that have been charged. I also have the physical features of the vessels and a picture. For the canal, it's necessary to take two photos, one from the outside and another one from the bridge. The regulations require that we take two photos. And we also have information about the country where the vessel was built. This one was built in Korea. And the flag. And we are talking about around 65,000 ships that are in the database at the moment. Let's see if we can find some records. For example, this one, OCCL Poland, crossed on March 1st and pay $1.2 million. It's the one that holds the record at the moment. And also this is important information for the managers of the canal. And this option allows me to see the future transits up to 7 days. Here I see the type of ships that are going to cross the canal. The crossings may be up to 38 per day, and having this information 7 days in advance is extremely important. We also have a dashboard section. And let's see what happened today with regard to the turnover. If I go into one of the segments, for example, the full containers invoiced an amount of 3 million, and the gas ships 72,000. We can see it in a grid or in bars. We can also see what happened last week. And the performance last week was the one you see on the screen, 30 million for the full containers. So the managers of the canal have relevant information by this means. And this is another kind of graph. It concerns the booking by slot. Vessel information. I have all of the information concerning the vessels features for the 65,000 vessels that we have in our database, and then we have maps. We are using Google Maps at the moment, and we can see the mix of vessels that will be crossing. Right now, I am reading the AIS signal of each vessel, which tells me all of the information, the name, in which direction it's going, the type of cargo, and we have a color code in order to differentiate them. Let's zoom on some of them, and let's go to the Atlantic to see what's going on in the Atlantic logs. Maybe I want to find out what's this ship in blue, and it tells me that it's the Atlantic journey, and right now it's in the Gatun locks in Cologne. And if I click on this message again, it will give me information about the vessel. And this is in real time. And I can also see how many times it's crossed the canal and how much it's paid. We can also filter the information by market segment. Maybe I want to see only the full containers on the map. It's now filtering the information, and it's going to show me on the map only the full containers. Let us look at one on the Pacific. The one in red, I want to see which book that is, and here you have the information. It's the Madison. And if I click on the message, it brings information that gives us the general features of the vessel. The important thing is to make this application intuitive so that the same information can be reached from various points. This is the photo from the bridge of the vessel, and we can also see how many times it's crossed the canal, and it's crossed twice, and every time it paid more than $1 million. So if you help me switch now, after having seen the application, I come back to my presentation. What's next? After having developed these applications, now we have more to do. At the end of September, beginning of September or of October, we are going to release 6 applications concerning the inspections, which are very important. Chemical inspection, health inspection, because it's very important to keep certain parameters inside the application, hydrocarbon spills, safety, and many have 2 components: the web component, which may be based on iPads, and we are going to continue developing it. And as you heard yesterday in some of the presentations, it's not about technology only, it's about people and the team in charge of these applications. Numbers 7 people. I'm one of them. The productivity has increased 2 or 3-fold, and the level of quality of the applications is very important for the internal client and for the external client too. These applications have to be thought over very well and have to be supported by the right platform, the right tool, and with the right approach we can achieve this and much more. Thank you very much.